Real Hi-Fi here. I thought about doing a video on basically taking into consideration the amplifiers that most people have in this world, and they usually span between $500 to $5,000. So let me show you the the three tricks that you can do where you can spend a tiny bit of money on improving the amplifier that you have. So let's start off with it. So we have three sound killers in amplifiers, three big ones, and these are parts of the amplifier that usually don't get enough attention. The first one is the inlet plug, the power plug, as you can see here on this amplifier. This is usually a very crappy piece of metal that only really gets the signal through. It doesn't create good sound usually. Then we have the RCA and XLR terminals and the speaker terminals. The speaker terminals are really important. They're often very neglected, and they will probably make the biggest difference of all. So let's have a look at one of these amplifiers here. This is a Macintosh. This is a YBA. YBA again. And I can't really remember what this is. I think this is a circa amplifier. Here we have some terminals again, and yeah, this is what I mean. You could, I would say that you could easily say that there are 10 classes of inlet plugs, power plugs, 10 classes of speaker terminals, and 10 classes of RCA terminals. And usually when we're dealing with these parts, a normal person will in their lifespan only listen to class 1, 2, maybe 3 out of 10, 10 being the best. This here is basically as low as it gets. This is around 1 on the 10 scale. These clip terminals where you can only put some wire in, these are absolutely horrible. And you can kind of understand it when you're dealing with this crappy piece of equipment, that it's made in the way that it is. Next to that, second grade are the ones that we have above. You get a better connection, but still it's very basic metal. So I would call this probably 2.5 on that scale. This is perhaps a 2 on this picture here, as you can see. These are horrible. Okay, so all of these about three classes here, stay away from them. They're really bad. They just destroy your sound. So if you can get rid of them, I would recommend getting rid of them. They are really bad. Next, we have this like usual standard of crappy terminals that I see a lot, really a lot. And I'll give you an example of that. We have the circa one where they use these terminals here, and these are actually the same terminals as you can see in this YBA amplifier. It's what the reason why I took these pictures were that YBA and circa, they have usually a huge amount of untapped potential. So that alone, changing these terminals from the crappy standard that they use to something like, let me show you the list here. Where are you? Oh yeah, here we are. if you can start putting some stuff in, for example, like cheap cardas or V-ball on eBay, or even the cheap Furutek, it gets quite a bit better. Quite a bit better. Going from class 3 to 4 is a huge difference, believe it or not. There is a huge difference. And again, from 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, and so on. So I would generally recommend, in terms of money, that you spend money on this particular one. This is a plug that has gone underneath the radar that some manufacturers are using. You get a lot of value with this plug. It's called CMC, and they make gold, copper, red copper, all kinds of varieties. In terms of speaker terminals and RCA plugs, they give you fantastic value. They are really, really, really cheap, and they have this gorgeous human-like quality. And stuff like tonality, personality, timing, aesthetics, you get all that in I wouldn't say in a perfect form. It still has its limitations, but in regards to the money that you're paying, you're getting so much more for the money compared to most other brands out there. Now I have to say that the way that I've ranked these parts here is my take on it. So obviously, I've heard these AudioNote Ongaku Silver speaker terminals. They are clearly the very, very best. So stable, so much good bass, so much good control, so musical, just ridiculous. And I haven't heard anything that comes close to that. And I've basically heard most speaker terminals in the world. Second of all, the Maishu, they're actually pretty cheap. They don't cost that much compared to most of the others. So if you can't take CMC gold or red copper, I would suggest that you take the AudioNote Maishu silver terminals. I think Hi-Fi Collective probably stores them. You can see them here in the picture right here. Actually pretty cheap, and but they're so natural. The problem with most terminals that are silver and rhodium are usually the same things that everybody complains about, is that they're overly bright. They have this huge sound stage, but you just don't get any substance, which is really annoying. But these are really fantastic. Let's just say, for shits and giggles, that you've got some kind of a tube amplifier. If you have a tube amplifier and it's relatively good, put these AudioNote Maishu terminals on. If you can't afford them, take maybe the CMC red copper. Red copper is a bit more down to earth, raw, unsophisticated. But if you have an overly warm sound, maybe you want to go with the red copper. If you have a slightly thin sound, I would suggest the CMC gold, since they're more robust and round. But if you have a very, very good amplifier, you could possibly also put these silver terminals here on a transistor amplifier. I would usually not recommend it, because most transistor amplifiers in this price class that we're talking about, $500 to $5,000, they're actually built so badly that you can actually put terminals on the amplifier that would amplify the bad qualities of that amplifier. So you have to take into consideration making all of these tweaks. If you have some half good, okay equipment, stick with the CMC. CMC stays in a safe zone, so it doesn't retrieve too much detail, but still gives you that fantastic blossoming sound, characteristic down to earth quality, and it has a bit of everything. Really, really good value. Let me just go back. These are, of course, the Vibo plugs. Wanted to share them because you don't really have anyone reviewing those plugs. I don't know if they're copy plugs of Food Tech or what they are. I tried some and they're actually pretty good. So it's like it's around the CMC sound. I still prefer the CMC metal instead of the V-ball metal. The V-ball is generally more what can I say, slightly more tonally dark and boosted in sound, where CMC is more like down to earth, raw, bit more earthy sound. The CMC generally, and you can see the CMC speaker terminals right here. I took a random price from a seller on eBay, and you can see they don't go for a lot of money, so they give you a lot of value. And typically, people would pick Furutech, WBT, or Carter's, and they're all good in their own way. They're all very very different sound characteristic wise. So if you're a Carter's guy and you've got Carter's cables and things like that, you might want to then reconsider and then going for Carter's plugs, because Carter's they are a very good alternative. But just recognize the fact that all of these brands here have their own distinct sound, and Carter's is not really my kind of thing. I think what they're doing with their sound is very good, especially with their plugs, especially with their speaker terminals. They're very good at making speaker terminals, and it's a bit darkish sound for me. It's slightly tonally off balance for me. So of course, if you've got maybe some half crappy transistor equipment, it could compensate and do a good job on that. So it could be very fitting for that, but I generally wouldn't recommend, if you have a pretty warm and dark sounding amplifier, putting something like Carter's terminals on it. Wouldn't recommend it. Of course, we got what most people consider here WBT, the official king of RCA and speaker terminals, and they do make a very good job doing what they do. The problem I have with WBT is mostly the price. I find that for that amount of price that you're paying, they should be more lively, more free, slightly more natural sounding, but overall very good metals that they make. So obviously very impressive. You get when you get into expensive equipment, they usually start using WBT gold plugs and stuff like that, and then in their bigger models they have WBT silver. I've never really understood why they do this. Obviously it looks very good, so I think it's partly to do with the aesthetics of WBT, but I think that WBT generally charges too much money for what you're getting, so that's generally why I wouldn't recommend using WBT, but that's just me. Furutech, yeah, again, generally not into the Furutech sound. They make some impressive stuff, especially the very expensive ones. These are one of the most expensive ones that they have. The problem I have with Furutech is, for me, for my standard of music, I find that they, a bit like the Carters, they compensate to get to the goal line, and I just don't like the way that they compensate. I don't like the tonality. I don't like the signature too much. I think it's a bit too much in the hi-fi direction. A tiny bit also like WBT, but I think it's especially bad with FullTech. I can understand why people really like them. When you're coming from lower class plugs over to FullTech, you definitely feel that there's a big difference going on there. If you're the type of person that has, like this craving for this modern hi-fi sound where it's up in your face and detail and it's like thumpy bass, and it's stuff that feels music that feels boosted somehow, and really high resolution and moving a lot from left to right channel. If you're into that kind of thing, fine, go with the FullTech. They give a very impressive sound. I do prefer the more down to earth, solid. I wouldn't say solid, but down to earth, more natural, laid back CMC sound. That's my kind of thing. I think it's a more compatible sound that works generally with most equipment out there. So I would recommend going with that instead. V-Ball, also, yeah, not really my kind of thing, but I can understand why people use them. That they're like a cheap alternative to FullTech. Has a lot of similarities to the FullTech sound, and for the price, you're actually getting quite a bit of value there for your money. So also pretty good, but not my kind of thing. So generally, in regards to all these plugs, I would say that stick with the CMC. If you've got a slightly warm amplifier, use the CMC red copper plugs. If it's on the thinnish side, use CMC golds. If you have a really good amplifier, really good hidden gem, for example, very good example, if you have Abyss sound, if you have YBA, maybe a very good, I wouldn't say Macintosh amplifier, but something that you consider being very good and that has solid components inside the amplifier, then put Audio Note Maestro on it. Get a technician to do that for you. It makes a huge difference. And this is basically the only silver plug that I would recommend, because I find that generally silver plugs and rhodium plugs don't go well with most equipment. You have to have some really exceptionally good equipment for it not to sound overly bright and fatiguing. And these just sound more natural than the regular or pretty good copper gold plugs out there. So do that. Just want to show you the list here. And of course, Angaku silver is the best and also probably the most expensive of them all. That's pure silver together with tellurium, or whatever it's called. They're really good. Really good. Here are the RCA plugs. I thought about not mentioning these first three ones because they're not worth anything. But that is the usual standard. People are used to this standard here, going from level 1 to 2 to 3. Also with speaker terminals. And this is a great example. Let me show you that again. They look okay, but these speaker terminals here, they really inhibit the sound. They give this like artificially thumpy, dark-ish sound, but still not entirely dark and thumpy. You turn the volume up and suddenly it's like it's just all in your face, very harsh, uncontrolled. So these are a huge liability. Get rid of these types of plugs. And also when you're dealing with for example, the regular YBA lower class terminals here, they're okay. They're like almost a step better than these ones, but still, I'm not so crazy about them. I also think that they inhibit the sound a lot. And then going perhaps slightly up in class, we have these Macintosh lower class terminals. I've also had to deal with those and really don't like them. But just be aware that if you have a Macintosh amplifier, for example, if you change the speaker terminals to something that doesn't look very good and that is unoriginal, it can be difficult selling it again, just so you know. But it will actually raise the sound quite a bit. And one of the complaints I have with the Macintosh design here is the inlet plugs that they use. They're actually quite bad. If you look inside, they're very plasticky and thin. They're not very solid, and the metal that's in them, it doesn't sound like it's very good. It's a pity that you can't change them, because I actually did that with one of my amplifiers, and it made the sound quite a bit better. So if it is at all possible, if you've decided that you're sticking with your Macintosh amplifier, that in itself, changing the inlet here, can make the sound overall more stable and give it a bit more character. So I would, in regards to this one, I would put a bottom class Fuertech plug there. I wouldn't want to put the best Oyade Inlet R, because let me just show you that down here. This is the best inlet plug on the market. Nothing comes close to this. This requires very good equipment, and that's why I wouldn't put it in most amplifiers. If you have a very good tube amplifier or one of the best transistor amplifiers, and you want that bit extra, Oyade Inlet R is good in every single aspect. You just need the equipment that's solid enough to handle it. And Fuertech, also very good. Fuertech top class inlet power plugs. And then, but once we get down to this Fuertech middle class, and especially this, I forgot to write, Oyade Inlet 174, here we begin to start to get into problems. This is a very difficult plug to work with. I would only recommend using this rhodium plug here on equipment that's too warm. So let's say you've got a Macintosh MC275 with standard tubes. Use this then. It gives a bit more attack, a bit more grunt, a bit more resolution, a bit more air. It's a very aggressive plug. If you've got like Torhauge warm tube sound, it's usually very, very warm, sweater warm. You can also go with this plug, very fitting. And yeah, this is where it starts getting really good. Once you get into these V-Ball inlet power plugs, you can probably find it on eBay. And again, it takes a significant step up once you get into the Fuertech power plugs. So that's basically everything. Yeah, as I said, 10 classes of speaker and RCA terminals, and also inlet plugs. Go for these three things. And if I had an amplifier like this, for example, I did this with a similar Sugden A21A. It's one of the newer ones. What I did was I changed the inlet plug to Inlet Oyade R. Yes, I did. And I went over to the CMC gold terminals here, speaker terminals, and the RCA. And it only cost me like, I think it was around $150 to $200 in parts. And then I had a technician, a friend, do it, help me with fixing that almost for free. So you can take, let's say you've got an amplifier like this, you can improve it and make it at least twice as good for only $200. So I recommend doing that, because it's a pity if you let a good thing like this, if you sell a good amplifier like this, and you say, I want to try something new, and then you only go for something slightly better and still have the same crappy problems that most amplifier have, that are speaker terminals, RCA terminals, and the inlet plug. These are basically filters making everything in the amplifier work optimally. You can have a lot of good parts in an amplifier. It just won't sing. It won't let go of the music. It'll probably be a bit closed in and dark, or maybe it will be harsh and inaccessible. And perhaps you have to have the amplifier on for like half a day or a whole day, using a lot of power just to get that smooth sound, or close to getting to that smooth sound. So definitely recommend doing this. This is one of those hidden tweaks that most people won't recognize. They'll just buy themselves some new equipment, and let's say you go up to some equipment that's probably worth six, seven, eight, maybe even $10,000 or more. Most of this equipment have some similar problems that speaker terminals. Obviously, once you go up, typically a couple of $1,000s, the speaker terminals also usually get a tiny bit better, but the inlet plug is usually the same crap quality unless you reach those really ridiculous amounts of money. So you might as well try and stick with the amplifier that you have. If it is a decent amplifier, and I'm not talking about a Onkyo or Pioneer cheap receiver that's 20 years old and where it's complete board design and you can't get in there and do anything. I'm talking about once you get up to around this class of equipment, you've got some potentially very good sound just sitting there. Can't really get out of the amplifier. Just got this like dark mush of nothing, and you've probably only got like let's say a couple of $100. You can easily, for a couple of $100, get some good speaker terminals, make it safe, have a CMC Gold speaker terminal and RCA sound, and then probably go with something like a Furtek or something like that, inlet plug, and just listen to that amplifier. Probably take a week or two or three before it fully burns in the parts, and it will just make everything come alive and be fantastically better. And one of the secrets for really improving that sound is also if you can use some soldering tin that's a bit above average. So WBT, Cardas, or even the best soldering tin, which is Audio Notes silver soldering tin. Very expensive, but if you have a very, very good amplifier, I recommend doing that, because that's silver Audio Notes soldering tin. I think you can get it at like Hi-Fi Collective UK site, something like that. The clarity just gets a lot better. The stability, the naturalness gets a lot more accessible. Once you use these cheap soldering tins, they do the job, and you don't notice too much how bad they are when you're dealing with equipment that isn't that good. But once you start getting up in top class equipment like Macintosh ear amplifiers, Jadis, stuff like this, you really start to notice these small subtleties in the music. So try and do that. I hope this video has really encouraged you to stick with your amplifier if it is a decent one. Of course, if it's a crap receiver, not worth a lot, then of course you can't do much more than upgrade to some equipment. Like, for example, this in most countries will go for about $300 to $600, I would say, and you could probably get a Sugden A21A. For about that amount of money, and then it's usually only like 5, 10, 15 years old, maybe even 20. but they're still good amplifiers, you know. And you could possibly also, if it's a pretty good version of it, you could replace some of the caps with the same type of cap, same specifications, and just make them slightly larger. You could do that. I wouldn't entirely recommend doing that unless they're worn down, but that could also change the sound quite a bit. But I'd recommend sticking with the caps that are in, trying to go with them, using them. I hope this has helped you, and if you need specific help with your equipment, your setup, you can always get in contact with me in the below email, and we can figure something out so I can help you with your setup. Usually I charge around $50 for that, but we'll figure something out. You can also just, of course, look at my videos and trying to get all the free information. So I really hope that coming out with all these videos, that the entire hi-fi community that has a very low standard of equipment can raise their equipment to a certain level that will make the music more enjoyable without having to really lose a lot of money on testing a lot of equipment, buying new equipment, and then always, you know, the big problem I feel that exists in the world is that most equipment that most people listen to, that's accessible to the public, only is working at around 15-20% of its maximum potential. So I hope that in making all these videos that you guys can get your equipment closer to more like 30-40% of its maximum potential, getting up to, when you start getting up to around 60-70%, you have to actually invest a lot of time and a lot of money and fully understand what's going on in the equipment and make everything match with the plugs and the wire and everything else than that. So it's difficult getting up there, but boosting your setup from around a 15 out of 100 to around 30 makes a huge difference. It can actually make something like this amplifier, a Sugden amplifier, perform as good as a standard used Macintosh that would probably cost 5-7 times more. So hope you can use all this equipment. Get in contact with me, and like to hear what you think in the description of the video. And of course, remember to subscribe. Bye.